For temperature control, power output, and emissions compliance, liquid cooling beats air cooling. That is not an opinion. By almost every thermal engineering metric, a liquid-cooled motorcycle engine runs more consistently, makes more power per cubic centimeter, and pollutes less than a comparable air-cooled one. And yet, a massive share of the motorcycles sold on this planet right now still use air cooling. Some of the biggest brands in the world, including Harley-Davidson, Royal Enfield, and BMW, spent decades actively fighting against liquid cooling. Harley riders literally refused to buy bikes with radiators on them. So what is going on here? If liquid cooling is so much better, why does every motorcycle engine not use it? It turns out the answer involves a $900 motorcycle in India, a World War II fighter plane, a Porsche worth 50 times more than the car that replaced it, and one of the most stubborn cultural battles in automotive history. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly why better does not always win. Let us start with the physics, because the numbers here are not even close. When your engine burns fuel, only about 30% of that energy actually moves the motorcycle forward. The rest, and we are talking 70%, turns into waste heat. If that heat is not managed, your pistons expand, your oil breaks down, and eventually your engine seizes. So every motorcycle needs some way to get rid of that heat. The question is how? Air cooling is the simplest answer. You put metal fins on the cylinder, air flows over them while you ride, and heat transfers from the hot metal into the cooler air through a process called convection. More surface area means more cooling. That is why air-cooled engines have those distinctive ridged cylinders that every motorcyclist recognizes. But here things get interesting. Water-based coolant, the 50-50 mix of water and ethylene glycol used in liquid-cooled systems, absorbs roughly 3.4 times more heat per kilogram than engine oil. And compared to air, air carries approximately 4,000 times less heat per unit of volume than water. Those are not small differences. Those are orders of magnitude. What this means in practice is that a liquid-cooled engine can hold its operating temperature within a tight 5 to 8 degrees Celsius window. The thermostat closes during cold starts, so the engine warms up fast, then opens to circulate coolant through the radiator once everything reaches the ideal temperature. A purely air-cooled engine has no coolant thermostat controlling the process. The moment the motorcycle starts moving, air hits those cylinder fins, and cooling begins, whether the engine is ready or not. And in traffic on a hot day, no airflow, no cooling. Air-cooled cylinder temperatures can swing 50 to 100 degrees Fahrenheit just from riding conditions changing. And that temperature control is where the real performance gap shows up. See, when engineers know the exact temperature an engine will run at, they can push everything harder. Higher compression ratios become possible because there are no unpredictable hotspots that cause detonation and knock. Air-cooled engines typically max out around 9-to-1 or 10-to-1 compression. Liquid-cooled engines routinely run 12-to-1 or even 13-to-1. The BMW Boxer engine tells this story perfectly. The last air and oil-cooled R1200 made 110 horsepower from 1,170 cubic centimeters. When BMW added partial liquid cooling to that same displacement in 2013, compression jumped to 12.5-to-1 and power climbed to 125 horsepower. That is a 14% increase from the same engine size just by controlling the temperature better. Later, the larger 1,254 cubic centimeter R1250 GS with full liquid cooling and variable valve timing pushed output to 136 horsepower. Harley-Davidson's numbers tell an even clearer story. Their air and oil-cooled Milwaukee 8 117 in the Road Glide makes about 105 horsepower from 1,923 cubic centimeters. It is tuned for low-end torque, not peak power. But Harley's liquid-cooled Revolution Max platform shows what happens when you remove the thermal constraints. The Pan America 1250 makes 150 horsepower, and even the more street-tuned Sportster S pulls 121 horsepower from a related 1250 cubic centimeter V-twin. That is significantly more power per cubic centimeter, with a 9,500 revolutions per minute redline that would be unthinkable in an air-cooled Harley. Liquid cooling does not just keep things cooler, it lets the entire engine work fundamentally harder. Ducati's Monster lineup paints the same picture. The air-cooled Monster 1100 Evio from 2011 represented the absolute ceiling of what air cooling could do in that platform. 100 horsepower from 1,078 cubic centimeters. When Ducati switched to liquid cooling with the Monster 1200 in 2014, power jumped to 135 horsepower. The 1200R hit 160. And here is a detail that affects your wallet directly. The air-cooled Monster needed its expensive desmodromic valve service every 7,500 miles. The liquid-cooled version needed service every 18,000 miles. When that service runs $500 to $1,000 at a Ducati dealer, the liquid-cooled bike can actually be cheaper to own over time, despite having more cooling components to maintain. So at this point, you are probably thinking, okay, case closed. Liquid cooling wins. Put radiators on everything. Conversation over. But that would make for a pretty short video, and the real world does not work that way. Because liquid cooling comes with baggage. A full system, the radiator, water pump, coolant, hoses, thermostat, fan, and overflow reservoir adds 5 to 9 kilograms to the motorcycle. That is 11 to 20 pounds of extra weight. At retail, that translates to a price premium of roughly $500 to $1,000. Over 10 years of ownership, expect another $800 to $1,500 in cooling-specific maintenance. This includes coolant flushes, potential water pump replacements, hose degradation, and thermostat failures. An AR-cooled engine needs none of that. Keep the fins clean, change your oil, ride. Now, for a $15,000 sport bike or adventure tourer in Europe or America, that premium is a small percentage of the total cost. Nobody buying a Ducati Panigale 5.4 is complaining about the radiator adding $500. But what about a $900 motorcycle? And this is where the story takes a turn that the Western motorcycle press almost never covers. India is the largest motorcycle market on the planet. Over 20 million two-wheelers are sold every single year. And the best-selling motorcycle in that entire country, the Hero Splendor Plus, starts at under $900 US. It runs a 97 cubic centimeter air-cooled engine. At that price point, adding $500 to $1,000 US for a liquid cooling system would mean a massive price increase. That would be commercial suicide for a manufacturer like Hero MotoCorp, which leads the Indian two-wheeler market with roughly 29% market share. But the economics go even deeper than sticker price. In much of rural India, where two-wheelers make up around 75% of all registered vehicles, mechanics work out of roadside shops with basic hand tools. They know air-cooled engines inside and out. A liquid cooling system requires diagnostic equipment, specialized coolant that might not be available in a small village, and training that simply does not exist in those workshops. If your air-cooled Hero breaks down on a remote highway in Rajasthan, somebody nearby can probably fix it. If your liquid-cooled radiator cracks in that same spot, you have a problem. This is why Royal Enfield, India's biggest premium motorcycle brand, kept their entire lineup air and oil cooled for decades before introducing their first liquid-cooled engine, the Sherpa 450 in the new Himalayan. Even their 650 cubic centimeter twins still use a conservative 9.5 to 1 compression ratio, which helps with durability and fuel tolerance across India's variable fuel quality. The contrast with Western markets is wild. The average motorcycle sold in the US or Europe costs somewhere between $5,000 and $15,000. At those prices, the cooling system premium barely registers. European riders expect liquid-cooled performance and emissions compliance. Indian riders need reliability, fuel economy, and a price their family can afford. Same product category, completely different engineering priorities. Now, between pure air cooling and full liquid cooling, there is a middle ground that deserves way more credit than it gets. Its origin story involves a World War II fighter jet. In the early 1980s, a Suzuki engineer named Etsuo Yokuchi was studying the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, the power plant from the legendary Spitfire fighter aircraft. along with the Cosworth DFV Formula One engine. Both used a technique where high-volume oil was sprayed under the pistons to carry heat away from the hottest internal surfaces. Yokuchi adapted this concept into what Suzuki called SACS, the Suzuki Advanced Cooling System. It used a double-chamber oil pump. One side handled normal lubrication at high pressure. The other side circulated a high volume of oil at lower pressure through dedicated cooling passages in the cylinder head and sprayed it directly under the pistons. The results were remarkable. Engine oil temperature stayed around 100 degrees Celsius and never exceeded 135 degrees Celsius, a 15-degree reduction compared to pure air cooling. The first motorcycle to use this system, the 1985 GSX R750, was 68 pounds lighter than the bike it replaced, while producing 16 more horsepower. That bike changed sport bike design forever. Not bad for a system inspired by a fighter plane engine from the 1940s. Suzuki used SACS across their lineup for over 2 decades, from 400 cubic centimeters bikes all the way up to the 1,400 cubic centimeters Hayabusa predecessor. The system proved that you could get meaningful thermal improvements without the weight and complexity of a full radiator setup. Today, oil cooling lives on in a different form. Bajaj in India uses it, Royal Enfield uses it on their Classic and Meteor 350, and Harley-Davidson's precision oil cooling on the Milwaukee 8 is a descendant of the same philosophy. Not as effective as liquid cooling, but far simpler and far cheaper. But even with innovations like SACS, the industry's biggest cultural battle over cooling technology happened in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Harley-Davidson's relationship with liquid cooling might be the most dramatic case of engineering versus identity in motorcycle history. For decades, Harley riders viewed those exposed cooling fins as sacred. The fins were not just functional, they were the look, the identity, the entire aesthetic of what a Harley-Davidson was supposed to be. When Harley launched the V-Rod in 2001, their first liquid-cooled engine co-developed with Porsche Engineering, the reaction from purists was brutal. A Harley with a radiator? That was heresy. The V-Rod actually sold well internationally and attracted new buyers to the brand, but it never became a core Harley the way Softails and touring bikes were. It was discontinued in 2017 after 16 model years, partly because Euro 4 compliance would have been too costly for its sales volume. Harley learned their lesson. When they introduced the Milwaukee 8 engine in 2017, they used what they called precision oil cooling for the base models. And for the touring bikes that desperately needed better heat management in traffic, they hid small liquid cooling radiators inside the fairing lowers where riders could not see them. The engine still looked air-cooled from the outside, with those iconic fins on full display. Today, even Harley's main touring lineup uses liquid-cooled Milwaukee 8 applications. Meanwhile, the Revolution Max engine in the Pan America and Sportster S represents Harley's full, unapologetic embrace of liquid cooling for their performance platforms. The Pan America makes 150 horsepower with 13:1 compression and a 9,500 RPM redline. But notice they put it in new model lines, not the classic touring bikes where tradition matters most. BMW navigated the same tension differently, treating heritage as part of the strategy. Their flat-twin Boxer engine has been in continuous production since 1923. Pure air-cooled airheads ran from 1969 to 1995. Then oil-cooled oil heads through 2004. Partially liquid-cooled Wasser Boxers from 2013. And full shift-cam liquid cooling from 2019. But then BMW did something fascinating. In 2020, right in the middle of this march toward liquid cooling, they launched the R18. A brand new motorcycle with a deliberately air and oil cooled 1,802 cubic centimeters Boxer engine, making 91 horsepower and 158 Newton meters of torque. This was not a leftover design. This was a statement. Air cooling for heritage models is not grudging accommodation. It is active product strategy. Now here's the part of the story that even the brands cannot control. Emissions regulations are slowly squeezing air-cooled engines out of existence. Euro 5 motorcycle limits, which took effect in Europe between 2020 and 2021, require carbon monoxide under 1 gram per kilometer and hydrocarbons under 0.1 grams per kilometer. That hydrocarbon limit represents a 41% reduction from Euro 4, and according to the European Motorcycle Manufacturers Association, ACEM, these motorcycle limits now match Euro 6 standards for cars on key pollutants. The core problem for air cooling is twofold. First, without a thermostat, air-cooled engines warm up slower, which means the catalytic converter sits there doing nothing during cold starts while hydrocarbons pour out the exhaust. An engineering consultant at Ricardo, one of the world's top powertrain firms, explained it simply. As soon as an air-cooled bike starts moving, you get full cooling immediately, so the engine takes much longer to reach operating temperature. That matters because catalytic converters need heat to function. Second, uncontrolled high temperatures in air-cooled cylinders produce excess nitrogen oxides, NOx, because NOx formation increases exponentially with combustion temperature. Liquid cooling solves both problems simultaneously. The thermostat blocks coolant flow on cold starts, getting the catalyst working faster, and consistent operating temperatures allow leaner fuel maps that reduce NOx. Triumph saw exactly this benefit when they replaced the air-cooled Bonneville with the liquid-cooled Street Twin. Triumph claimed the new bike achieved 36% better fuel economy on top of meeting the tighter emissions targets. Can air-cooled engines still pass these standards? Yes. BMW's R9T, Ducati's Scrambler 800, and Royal Enfield's 350 and 650 twins all comply with current regulations. But compliance costs keep rising with every new round of standards, and manufacturers keep doing the math on whether the engineering investment is worth the sales volume. Casualties are already piling up. The Yamaha XJR 1300 was killed because meeting Euro 4 would have required detuning it beyond recognition. Successive emissions rounds forced heavy revisions or outright discontinuation of bikes like the Ducati Monster 797, the Kawasaki KLR 650, and the Honda VFR 800. Euro 5 Plus, which arrived in 2024 and 2025, added onboard diagnostics with dual oxygen sensors, pushing compliance costs even higher. A future Euro 6 for motorcycles, expected later this decade, could be the final blow for many remaining air-cooled models. If you're enjoying this deep dive into motorcycle engineering, hit subscribe. We break down topics like this every week so you actually understand what's going on under the tank. So where does all of this leave us? Among the Japanese Big Four, air cooling survives mostly in legacy platforms that have not been fundamentally redesigned in decades. Honda's XR650L has been essentially unchanged since 1993 and still uses a carburetor. Suzuki's DR650S and Boulevard S40 are both based on 1980s designs. Yamaha's TW200 has not changed since 1987. Almost every genuinely new Japanese street bike platform is liquid-cooled now. The mini-moto segment, bikes like the Honda Grom, Monkey, Super Cub, and Dax 125, represents the last place where new air-cooled platforms still make sense. Small displacement, low heat output, and a market that prioritizes simplicity and affordability. And before we wrap up, let me clear up something that comes up in every comment section on videos like this. People love to say that air-cooled engines always overheat. That is not true. A properly designed air-cooled engine handles normal riding conditions without any issues. There are documented cases of air-cooled bikes running well past 100,000 miles without a single overheating incident. The problem is specific. V-twin, rear cylinders, and stop-and-go summer traffic are the scenario where air cooling genuinely struggles, which is exactly why Harley introduced cylinder deactivation at idle on some models, shutting down the rear cylinder completely to reduce heat when the bike is standing still. The flip side is also worth mentioning. People assume liquid-cooled engines always last longer, and that is not automatically true either. There are plenty of air-cooled motorcycles that have gone well into six-figure mileage with good maintenance. Cooling method supports durability, but maintenance determines it. An air-cooled engine that gets regular oil changes will outlast a liquid-cooled engine that gets neglected. Ducati keeps the Scrambler 800 as their air-cooled holdout specifically because simplicity was the key, and liquid cooling just did not match the concept. Meanwhile, their Panigale 5.4 extracts 214 horsepower from 1,103 cubic centimeters of liquid-cooled fury. That is nearly 3 times the specific power output of the Scrambler from the same company. So here's where I'll leave you with something to think about. The last air-cooled Porsche 911, the 993, ended production in 1998. Purists were devastated. They called the water-cooled 996 that replaced it a betrayal. Today, a clean 993 Turbo S sells at auction for $500,000 or more. The 996 that was supposed to be better, you can still find one for under $30,000. That tells you everything about the future of air-cooled motorcycles. The engineering verdict is clear on temperature control, emissions, and peak performance. But motorcycling has never been purely rational. Air-cooled engines are becoming what vinyl records became, technically inferior, culturally irreplaceable, and increasingly valuable precisely because the world is moving on. A $900 Hero Splendor in Mumbai, a $40,000 Harley Road King in Wisconsin, and a $25,000 BMW R18 in Munich all use air cooling for completely different reasons: cost, identity, and heritage. 3 forces that physics alone will never overcome. The air-cooled engine is not dying quietly, it is going out the way it came in, loud, proud, and running a little hotter than it probably should be. And honestly, that might be exactly why we love it. If this video changed how you think about motorcycle engineering, hit subscribe. We go deep on the stuff that actually matters under the tank every single week. I'll see you in the next one.